are going to talk how to estimate a position and why we should train our ability to do it as accurate as possible. Evaluation is an important part of systematic thinking in chess. It is as important as calculation, prophylactic thinking, strategic planning, or, for example, endgame technique. It doesn't really matter if we solve a puzzle or play a tournament game. Our thinking has to begin with the correct estimation of the position, and then all our action would be based on that estimation. If we estimate the position as better or winning for us, we usually have to start attacking, otherwise we might miss an advantage. If we estimate the position as equal, we have to look for some sort of improvement, how to activate pieces, what we would like to trade, what we would like to keep, how to rearrange our pieces, and how we can correct the legs of our position to improve the evaluation. If we estimate our position as worse, usually we have to defend accurately. And if we estimate the position as losing, then we can try absolutely everything, any crazy idea which come to our mind, some desperate attack, last chance traps, or absolutely anything. So, how do we actually estimate a position? When we solve a puzzle or play a game, the very first thing to do is to check how many pieces are on the board. It is not like material is the most important thing in chess, but it's the one which is easier to check. The other thing we have to check immediately is if we have some direct threats, checks, captures, or strong threats. Because if one side is going to deliver checkmate in 2, the other features of the position do not really matter. If we play a game, we usually know if one side is having a material advantage, and we keep checking for direct threats every move. What can be more valuable than material advantage? That is, of course, safety of the king. Safety of the king is more important than any material. Now we are going to stop after those 2 points, because in some extreme situation it can be more than enough to estimate the position, and we will have a look at example. Let's have a look at the game Panchenko-Kochev. Try to estimate this position correctly and predict what would be a logical result of the game. Black has a huge material advantage, extra knight plus pawn. Both kings do not look safe, but the black one is under direct threat of checkmate in 1 by queen g7. So, at this situation, strategic features of the position, like open files or pawn structure, do not really matter. We have to start calculation to decide whether black can protect his king effectively, and then black will win the game because of huge material advantage, or white threats are really dangerous and white can deliver checkmate or at least perpetual check. To understand what is going on, we have to start with the easiest defense, for example, knight f5. After knight f5, white does not really have a choice. He has to try to deliver other kind of mate, playing queen take h7. Of course, black cannot capture. That is exactly checkmate. It means that black king has to run away, and white will start checking and deliver perpetual check. So game will end as a draw. White cannot continue his attack. Rook h3 is a terrible blunder. Knight is taking on d4 with check. Rook is going to be lost, and black will win, which means that white should keep checking, and that is draw. If black try to give some checks to white king, which is also not safe, the line will be more complicated. After knight f5, white will still try to checkmate black king by queen take h7. He will again run away to f8, and now white needs to find very important intermediate move, b4. Why is that necessary? If white give check on h8 and grab the rook, black will take not on g3 but on d4. It cannot be recaptured because of queen e1 check. Now black can block check with the rook, then with the knight, and at the end black is having two pieces for the rook and winning position. What would intermediate move b4 change in this line? If white include b4 in the same variation, black won't be able to block check by using rook c7. Now rook c7 is no more possible, and after king f8, white keep checking, and that's again perpetual check. King e7 and perpetual check. Black cannot try to escape to g7 because there king will run into checkmate. All right, let's return back to our initial position. Should black agree for a draw, having extra knight and pawn? Fortunately for him in this game, he does not, and he did not. To ruin white mating construction, black can use very smart distracting move, bishop g4. And after bishop g4, white is forced to capture the bishop. After king f1, his queen would be trapped, and if he captures the bishop, after knight f5, queen take h7 is no more available. Queen has to go back, and black having two extra pawns, and after queen b5 check, white resign, he is losing also a piece. So black won the game. And we did not use anything in estimation of that position, only the material, safety of the king, and direct threats. The situation in the game Punching a Kochev was really extreme. Usually we have to deal mostly with the positions where both kings are relatively safe, or at least not in danger of immediate checkmate. So if material is equal, or material advantage is not decisive, and both kings are relatively safe, the next step will be to evaluate the pieces. Activity of the pieces include many very important things. It could be good or bad pieces, open files, outposts, weak squares. Control over center is very important thing in chess, and other kind of advantages like development advantage, space advantage, etc. We will not stop in all of that now in detail, just mention that different things can affect the activity of our pieces. Then the very last thing which we do is to evaluate the pawn structure. Why the pawn structure come last in that estimation? It is not as important as material, not as important as safety of the king, and even not that important like activity of the pieces, because other things can compensate broken pawn structure. If one side has very active pieces, it can compensate broken pawn structure, but usually not otherwise. And one more thing which can affect everything in that structure is the dynamic, tactics, and other things. Dynamic in the position can give one side compensation for material lack. It can make the king unsafe. It depends on the activity of the pieces, and as I've already mentioned, it can compensate a broken pawn structure. So actually, it does not really look like that, because dynamic can affect all other points. Then probably our estimation system would finally look like that. And now we will check more complex example and have a look at the game of 5th world champion Max Euwe. The game Max Euwe versus Saul Landau is pretty famous. It has been analyzed by many experts, including Garry Kasparov. We will not go into opening details. I'll just show the first moves quickly. That is Slav defense. And we will stop after move 9. At that very moment. Since the game happened to be very exciting and Garry Kasparov analyzed it, he got a feeling that he wanted to repeat the same opening line, and he tried it many times in his games, but all of his opponents chose to play here a5, which is much safer than queen b6, which Max Euwe's opponent chose in the game. What is the difference? After a5, the way of playing is going to be very strategic. White cannot win pawn on b7 by knight a2, because if he grabs the pawn, that will be a draw by threefold repetition. White queen cannot escape, which means that estimation of the position is close to be equal. If we look at that and use our system, we will see that material is equal, both kings are safe, pieces are about the same active, and pawn structure is fine for both sides. What's wrong with queen b6? Queen b6 looks very natural, but unfortunately for black, it allows white to get an advantage in center, because white can straight away play e4. The pawn is untouchable if black try to take it by knight take e4. Then white will take on e6, and black king in center does not really feel good, which means that bishop has to retreat and white got a control over center. It's not so easy to estimate that position, even looking at that beautiful white center, because pawn e4 is under attack, and if white push it, black has actually nothing to complain about. With the knight on d5 and white pawns blocked, the position is again about to be equal, and there is nothing wrong with black. But surprisingly, at that moment, white came with amazing sacrifice. He took the pawn on e6. This is one of the most difficult types of sacrifices in chess. It's absolutely impossible to calculate all the lines precisely up to some clear result, and of course not up to checkmate. And I'm absolutely sure Max Euwe did not try to do it during the game. He had to rely on his intuition. Intuition, on one hand, is some sort of magical feeling. On the other hand, it is based on the player's previous knowledge, experience, and understanding. That's why stronger player has better intuition. So, black has to accept the sacrifice, which he did, and then white played one more very good move, a5, distracting black bishop from defending his king, so he could not block check on from e7 square, and then after check, king has to go to d8. On f8, black will lose a piece after e5 and something like that, so king has to go to d8 and white played e5. Let's stop one more time and have a look at the position and try to estimate how white knows that his attack is strong. Black has big material advantage. He has an extra piece for just one pawn. White king is very safe and black king is not safe at all. Even we don't see any direct threat. White does not have mating threats and even does not have any checks. On the other hand, white pieces are very active. White is controlling the center and he can use many pieces in his attack. So, intuition should say to us that white attack is really strong. In the game, black played rook e8, which is very natural move. He could have tried other options too. For example, knight e4. Knight e4 would not be good because if white take and play queen f7, there are many threats. Bishop g5 check, e6, and it look really scary for black king. For example, rook f8, and then of course they cannot take on f3. White will play e6. On any other move, even bishop d5, still e6, and then white is going to win. They've already got the piece back even after rook take f3. The lines here are not forced, just to illustrate how strong white attack is. Black cannot defend in a passive way. Knight e8 allows white to unfold his attack very smoothly. Once again check. Attack the queen. Open all the files. And here it is so clear that extra piece is not a good compensation for black for his king position. And if we look at black pieces, they are very poor. The rook on e8 and the knights and all of them. So it's clear that white has a compensation for a piece he sacrificed. The best way for black, according to computer engines, was to take on c3 and then play knight e4. We are not talking today about computer engines evaluation, because when we play game, we cannot check the engines, and there is no use to know their estimation. We are talking how people think during the game and how we choose good moves. So, computer engine evaluation is still white better. White is better despite black is having an extra piece, which means that white attack is really strong and black king is unsafe. So we can use engines in our analysis to prove our human conclusions. In the game, black chose rook e8, attacking the queen. It's very natural move, trying to get rid of the main white attacker. Queen went to h3. Now knight e4 is no longer possible. It will lead to losing a piece after check on h4. Other moves of the knights are also unsatisfactory. For example, after knight d5, white will trade that knight and start chasing the king, and it's clear that the king will not survive. Knight g8 does not look good at all. For example, knight d5 check to open all the files, and then something wrong will happen on that diagonal. Black king is really very poor. So black captured on c3. That is the only move, so he chose a really good move. Then computer engine Stockfish suggests to take b takes c3 and evaluate the position as winning for white. In the game, fifth world champion Max Huey took on f6, and as we know, he also won the game. So let's have a look what happened in the game. Bishop take b2 leads to similar position like in the game. White will capture, take on g7, and pawn g7 is very, very annoying for black. Black has to watch so it doesn't turn into new queen. Interesting that computer engines inform us that in this line, after queen b3, the evaluation of the position is equal, which means if you play that against engine will be able to defend black position. What does it change for us as human players? Actually, to defend that position, black has to find a series of only moves, which is not so easy to do in a condition of tournament game. White will play d5 to open all the files, bring more attackers. At first, black must find queen f5, which is possible for a human player to do. Queen f7 would lose after knight e5 and just checkmate, so that is really possible. And then one more only move, king c8, and that position is evaluated by engine as equal, which is difficult to believe, but as I already mentioned, if you play it against engine will be able to defend. If black plays king c7, just one check will change the estimation to absolutely losing, and then no matter where that king goes, white attack is very strong. White can use all of his pieces and black cannot do so, and then after trading some of them, it's still white pieces much more active than black. And then after this beautiful check, if black try to capture, there is one more check and white wins. Black is absolutely defenseless. It's easy to notice how poor black pieces are. The estimation of that position is +8, according to Stockfish. Then, in the game, black did not take pawn on b2, which in human game would not change much, I believe, because it's not really possible to find all the computer lines for a human player in a tournament game. In the game, black played bishop b4, trying to return the pieces closer to king to defend him, which is very, very, very logical. White took on g7, and now we can stop and evaluate the position once again. What about the material? Black is still piece up for 2 pawns, but pawn g7 cost more than any normal pawn because it's very dangerous one. White king is safe, black king is not safe. White pieces are active. We cannot say that black pieces are really bad. They are not so badly placed. They are all mobilized. So that is not so clear about the pieces. Only rook a8 is not really participating. But Max Euwe had a great sense of initiative, so he believed his attack is still strong, and it is true. After bishop d6, to attack the king in center, we usually need to open up the files, so knight e5 starts the decisive actions for white. Black captures that knight with a bishop. If they took with the knight, it would not really change anything, because once the files are open, black king will not avoid checkmate. According to engine, it is checkmate in 10 moves. But even if we not do it precisely in 10 moves, it's obviously king f6 will not survive even in human game. Checkmate in 10 looks like that. many checks. Black king is coming to visit a white one, and it's for sure there will be mate. And here we go. Checkmate in 10 moves. So in the game, black took with the bishop, and then played not so accurate move and lost, but nothing would really help him. Maybe he could put some more resistance if he played knight take e5, but still the position is already losing. White will win that pinned knight. Black has no chance to unpin. Queen g3 will follow, and then knight on e5 will be lost. And if king b6, then just queen e3 check, and the knight is lost. After bishop f7, which was played in the game, white continue rook d1, and after bishop d5, e6, black is absolutely losing. Nothing can help him. Bishop e6 will be met by queen take e6, knight e5 by queen take h7. Black is defenseless. After knight f6, white answer bishop g5, and after queen c3, black resigned. If he try to take the pawn, that is absolutely lost. The easiest way to checkmate him, the fastest way, is to promote the pawn and then checkmate. So that is outstanding demolition. White crushed black with his amazing sacrifice based on the correct estimation and great intuition of Max Euwe. And we are going to keep talking about estimation of a position in the next lecture.